Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
The World According to Elmer is sponsored by CrookedRiverRadio.com. Crooked River Radio is an internet radio station that is live 24/7 playing top 40 hits from the 60s through the 80s. You can find us on Live 365, Simple Radio, Roku, Radio Garden, and even Alexa, as well as our website. Come on and join us on the Crooked River. Welcome aboard. We're headed for the World According to Elmer, with hosts Gerry Sornson and Pat Morrow. Don't worry, you'll enjoy it there. Better buckle in and enjoy the ride. Here come our hosts now.
Well, that was a nice intro song. Where else but Crooked River Radio can you hear the theme from The Godfather? And if I'm thinking correctly, I had this show growing up. This has nothing to do with ham radio, but I had this show that was my favorite show, and it was always on right after school. This is back in the 1960s, and I would rush home just in time every day to see Dark Shadows. And I think maybe that was the theme to Dark Shadows. I could be mistaken. Good evening, everyone. I am Gerry Sornson, Kilo Golf 8, Radio Yankee. Our Elmer Pat Morrow is here. He is November 8, Oscar, Quebec, Papa, and The Godfather. They go together. Pat, how you doing?
Not doing too bad, Jerry. How about yourself?
Doing great. I can't see you. I understand that you have something new, something to show everybody this evening.
Oh, you had to go and do that.
So we'll get to that in just a few moments when you make your appearance. Ah, there he is. What is that on your eyes? New glasses rock, don't they?
Actually, I can actually see for the first time in 2 years.
You know what? Everybody in your neighborhood's going to appreciate that. And all the folks that drive up and down your street.
My wife already does. I'm driving down the road saying, I can see the, look, that's his overlook over there.
There's white lines in the middle. Oh, that's good stuff, Pat. It's always great to get new eyes. If we were back in grade school, I'd have to call you Four Eyes or something, but I won't do that.
Well, I got a cataract surgery coming up, so that's going to have to happen.
Yeah,
That'll probably happen probably in the month of November. That's what I'm thinking.
That's something they've gotten better at.
They say it's more or less Band-Aid surgery now, so I'm not that worried about it.
Band-Aid surgery?
I've had people tell me that there's really not much to it. And these people,
my friend, whenever they use the word surgery, it scares me to death.
Yeah, I can understand that. But so, it's for a better, the cause is going to make me better.
Do they do that with the laser?
They supposedly cut the top of the eye, or the top of the lens with a laser. Then they use some sort of a sound thing to break it loose and then pull it out.
Ew.
It's supposed to be, from what I understand, it's a 15-minute per eye surgery.
Wow.
They said it doesn't take that long at all. And
my brother, not to tell you this story since you've got got this upcoming eye surgery, but my brother was an early adopter into this LASIK thing. And when it first came out, this was the surgery they do with the laser on your eyes where you can then see. In other words, they can correct your vision to where allegedly you don't need glasses moving forward. His LASIK, because he was an early adopter and got right in on the ground floor, didn't work so hot. He had it done, and he could see wonderfully for about 9 months. And after 9 months, the eyes went back. In fact, they got worse than they did before he had the surgery. And the doctor said, well, we can do the surgery again, but keep this in mind. We can only do LASIK twice, and you've had one. So there's one more we can do, and we can give it a try. And he just opted to go back to his glasses. He said,
yeah, I would probably do that too.
Not going to fool with it.
I would probably do that too.
I think they've probably gotten better at that kind of stuff now. And I had some retina surgery done with a laser, and I didn't feel anything. And like you said, it was 15 minutes in, and I was on my way, and it worked wonderfully. So I'm
From
sure
what from what
that it
they've
worked just fine.
from what they've told me that it's supposed to be. I was talking to Kerry, WHCTM, about it. He's had both eyes done about a year ago, and he says, I was fretting it up one side down. He said I was scared of it. He says, and they took me in there, and he says you sit in a chair for 45 minutes an hour while they put drops in your eyes and that. He says that's the actual worst part of it. He says the other stuff you don't feel any of it. He says they're up working around you, but that you don't and supposedly they put you in a twilight sleep, so that's
you won't even know what's going on.
You won't know what's happening.
That's even better.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it too. Knock me out.
Take a big hammer and just do this number. This sounds like a great conversation for 80 meters, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I quit going on 80 meters and using CW because I found that colonoscopy was too hard to tap out with Morse code. It just took too long.
Oh, you're killing me.
So we're going to have to come up with a Q code for colonoscopy. And while we're at it, we'll get one for cataract surgery. It'll be like QRC or something like that. We'll figure it out.
And that was just like what I came up with last night for you with the G5.
The G5RV. Speaking of non-resonant antennas, we were talking about the G5RV. What did you come up with?
G5 WTA. G5 WTA. For G5 won't tune anywhere.
Yeah, G5 won't tune anywhere.
I guess you could come up with a G5 NRA, almost like the National Rifle Association.
It might surprise you to know that even though I was in the hospital last week, I actually got some QSL cards this week. Yeah, kind of a
Tell
running
us why
joke
that
here
should surprise us.
You're on the old show, yeah. It's amazing how even when you're laying in the hospital bed, the mailman keeps bringing you cards. This is the only reason I go to the mail, folks. Otherwise, I would never even go to the box anymore. I get bills and I get QSL cards, and I get more bills than QSL cards. But this was a nice one that came in this week. I was on the air one morning on 40 meters. No, excuse me, it was on 20 meters. And KP4YO popped up, and I had a real nice rag chew, CW rag chew with this gentleman. And he sent me this nice picture. He is from Puerto Rico. His name is Armando Flores Martinez. And actually, he could listen to Crooked River Radio. That can be heard anywhere in the world on the World Wide Net.
Yep.
And so hopefully I'll send him a link to this program, and he can know that today I made him famous. But there's this poor guy sitting out on the beach, as you can see. He's been shipwrecked on this little teeny tiny island, but everything is good because he's got his radio and he's got his mic. Now, as to what he's using for electricity, I'm sure I don't know. But at any rate, KP4YO from Puerto Rico, thank you very much for the QSL card. It is a nice addition. I treasure it and cherish all of these.
And you know what, Gerry?
Kentucky.
I can
Kilo
see it.
4, let's see, Alpha Victor X-ray.
Yep.
And he writes, he says, Gerry, he said, not too many people take the time to do this anymore. But he said, I love to send QSL cards and to receive QSL cards. 73 John. John, fine business. I do too. And this was a nice contact. Kentucky's not all that far. I can't really call that one of the longest contacts I've ever had, but he had a nice strong station. He was running a doublet for his antenna. I got a nice color card in this week. I always try to feature the colored cards that come in. This has 2 teddy bears. I don't know whether you can see that or not. I tried to put these up where the reflection.
I can see them.
Got a teddy bear. He's running the radio, and you got another teddy bear over here running the code key. And there's a little word down here that I'm covering up, and it says teamwork. So the 2 bears are working together. Now, this guy has a heck of a radio. This is a Yaesu FT 1000, I believe, 1000 MP. And personally, I am not acquainted with that radio, but I can tell you from just looking at the card, that is one beast of a rig. And so good job on the radio. I can't afford a radio like that. Plus, of course, this show gets more popular. Then maybe I also can have an FT 1000 MP. And as far as antennas are concerned, let's see what he's running. He is running just a plain old dipole. It's like you say, Pat, 100 watts and a wire. You can talk to the whole world, and he's doing it right now.
Provided you can hear them.
Look at this little teeny card.
Hey, I can actually see that.
Yeah, I wondered, if I water this thing, do you suppose it'll grow into a real card one of these days? This is quite the thing now. I guess there are people that are having credit card size cards made up, and this gentleman was promoting his club, K9YA, Kilo 9 Y,
Yankee Alpha.
Yankee Alpha. And if you go to K9YA.org, you'll see his club. It's named after someone, and I'm going to go out afterwards after the show is off and just see what's on there. So if somebody puts their email address or their website address on their card, I'll go visit because I want to see what's there. Here's a buddy of mine that's in the Swan Ham Radio Club with me. His name is Jim Brown, and no, he did not play football for the Browns, but he is in J3B. We had a CW conversation we tried on 40. I caught up with him on 40 one night, but I could just barely hear him. I had to pull him out of the noise with my ears, which are not all that good anymore. And so I asked him to go over to 80. So we went over to 80, and I only went over to 80 with him because I know he has not had a colonoscopy here recently. So we went over to 80 meters. And I could hear him loud and clear because he's just across the state line in Pennsylvania, but he is a fellow SKCC member. One more for this week, and this one is a homemade jobber, and my first card was homemade. Nothing wrong with homemade. I love homemade cards. But, and by the way, the postage reminds me, I just went to pick a roll of stamps up this last week at the post office because I was out of stamps to mail my QSL cards. Postage has gone up. For a roll of 100 stamps, I paid $40, and that would have been $36 just a week ago.
Exactly.
So beware, postage has gone up, everyone. I hope you have some forever stamps at home. You're smarter than I if you do. But this was, and boy, is this a mouthful, KG4KTL. And if you try to tap that out in code, it's a tough call sign in code. And I remember this conversation because of that call sign. And I think I messed it up once or twice and then had to correct myself. But I think about that. There was a guy on social media this week that said, instead of just meeting a brand new ham, when he tells you his call sign, do you do what I do? And do you mentally tap that call sign out to see what it's like in code? And I have to confess, I do. When somebody gives me their call sign, I tap it out in my head. You don't?
I know you. I know about that. I've done that before. I don't know much as far as the code goes, but I did.
Well, when I picked KG8RRY, I just picked it because it was my name, and at that time I wasn't even in code. And then of course I learned CW. I learned Morse code here about 9 months ago, and I've been having a ball with it. But fortunately for me, I didn't have to change anything because KG8RRY is an outstanding call sign in code. And it just happened that way. There was no purpose, no anything behind it. But there are some folks that have terrible call signs in code. And if you're going to do a lot of CW, I would think you would want to look into getting that changed. There's one website, I forget the gentleman's call sign, and God bless him because he has indentured himself into having to take care of this thing, I think, for the rest of his life. But he puts up the 1x2s and the 1x1s and the 2x1s and all the call signs that everybody wants. you know, the ones that they're very favorable. And as people die or they retire, you know, the call sign is held for just a certain period of time, then it's put back in the pool. And he knows what's coming back in the pool. So you might want to look that up. You might want to look up expiring call signs or something to that effect. Just Google it, and his website will come up. And or just type in 1x2, 2x1. You put that kind of stuff in, and his website will come up, and you can see all the great you know, combinations of letters and numbers that are becoming available again if that kind of thing interests you. So that is it for the QSL cards. I'll spare you all the rest from this week. Those were the ones that stood out. So I hope you enjoyed looking at them just as much as I did when I received them in the mail. Tonight we're talking about something that everybody faces with their station. No shame in admitting it. And it's called noise. And noise can be broken down into two different parts. One is QRN. Now, QRN is natural noise. The other is QRM, M as in Michael, and that's man-made noise. And they're two totally different kinds of noise, but having said that, they both impact our stations. One of the cheapest things that you can do to make your station better and to begin to receive people that you've never even known were out there before is to lower the noise floor of your station. And we'll talk about some of those tips and some of those ideas to lower the noise at your station. But we've got a couple of videos tonight that are outstanding. Let's roll the big video here in just a second, Pat. And then we've got two smaller videos. We've got a video from Callum, if we have a chance to run it. That would be third. That would be the third one or the last one.
I only got two videos.
What's that?
I only got two videos from you.
I sent you one more.
I'll have to look for it.
I sent it later, and I apologize for sending you a third. So we'll go with what we have. We won't even worry about the other one. We'll run that one next week.
Okay.
That other one is a video, and we'll run it next week, and it demonstrates how your radio can actually be responsible for the noise that you're hearing, and can be responsible for the lack of reception that you have. And it doesn't affect transmission, but it does affect reception. And that's one of the things we'll cover next week. We'll just go with what we have for tonight. But let's go ahead and start out with the big video. And this gentleman is going to take us on a short journey. And we'll come back on the other side of this short journey. And we'll talk about noise, and we'll talk about your station. But he's got some great tips and some great ideas. So with that, Mr. Pat Morrow, our Elmer, let's roll that tape.
You're talking about the video with that's got the noise in, you know, the noise cure in it. That's an older guy that's in the beginning.
That's the one.
Okay, I just want to make sure. We'll be back on the other side of this after we get it all straightened out. You're listening to Crooked River Radio and The World According to Elmer.
There he is.
Listen, I've got an interesting video here.
Is that Walter?
An experiment. And I'm inviting you to come along and join me in this experiment. In fact, do the experiment along with me. And maybe we can all learn something that it'll help all of us, one or another. And it's to solve a problem which I have here at my QDH. And I'm sure that you have it at your QDH. Interested? Okay, come on, let's go. So the problem is, and I'm sure you have it too, is noise. Yep, I live in an urban area, and noise is a real problem. Let me just give you a little hint about what you can have a look and see what it's like. This the noise spectrum for 40 meters at my QTH here. And as you see, it's a pretty solid wall of noise. I know there are signals in there because when I go down to the FT8 portion of the band, I can see those signals and I can hear them. So they're in there, but try and pull those out, try and pull signals out of this on CW end of the band or the single sideband end of the band, and we have a problem. And that's the problem which I want to address. Now, of course, with any problem like this, in a scientific experiment, we've got to first of all state the problem, but the problem's got to be a little bit more specific, and it's got to have a bit of context as well. So here's the context. I live in an urban area, and this is a Google shot of my location here in one of the suburbs of Auckland. And as you can see, there's a lot of housing around me, and all that housing, of course, contributes to noise in one way or another, doesn't it? Now, the noise which I'm after, trying to chase, is the noise floor. There's no specific noise. It's like buzzes or motor noise or that sort of stuff, or any one particular noise. If there was, I could get out a direction finding loop, we could go find it and so on. No, it's the noise floor which I'm trying to address. Now let's come in for a closer shot onto my property, and there's my property, and I've hemmed it in blue there. That blue line will become significant in a little while, as will that red line that goes across the driveway there. Just take note of those. So that's our problem stated. Now, as we know, in any good scientific experiment, we also need to go, and we have to have an aim in the experiment. And our aim now is to reduce the noise. Well, that's a simplistic answer, and that's a simplistic aim, but it's a little bit more than that. What I really want to do is to increase the signal to noise ratio. Now, we could do that by just simply, here's our noise and our present situation, our signal, sorry, there, and our present situations, our noise is encroaching on the signal. And so the signal to noise ratio is very poor indeed. We could improve that simply by, again, there's our signal. We could get the noise down here by constructing a very large antenna with multiple elements and a multiple array antenna. However, we got to have our problem in mind. We're in an urban lot. I can't actually do this. I can't put up a 200-foot tower with multiple elements and multiple beams to achieve this. In other words, what we're achieving here is we're raising the signal level. We will raise the floor noise a little bit, but we raise the signal level greater than the noise level, so we get a good signal to noise ratio. Our problem is that here's our signal. We want to similarly reduce the noise. We're looking at this area here, get a good signal to noise ratio, but how are we going to achieve this? We have to achieve it by some other means, and this is by reducing the noise rather than increasing the signal, so to speak. That's our aim fairly well. Okay, again, in true scientific fashion, we're going to need some equipment. Let me put myself up there so we can talk about it as well. The equipment needs to be simple. In fact, I just want it to be wire. A few insulators, perhaps, little bits and pieces, but nothing expensive at all, just a simple wire. I think we can all rustle up a bit of wire to conduct our experiment with. You'll need a reasonable amount of wire, because what we really want to do is go right around the property like I have here in this blue line. So that blue line there goes right around the perimeter of my property, and the wire is actually held off the fence right along that, right around the property, except for two little areas there that you'll see that are in red. If you look carefully, there's one area, small area towards the top of the shot there, and then there's a red area across the driveway, and that's where the wire actually goes under the ground. Top section there goes under the ground to where a pathway is, and of course at the bottom there it goes under the ground, under the driveway. Let's go and have a look a little bit closer, shall we, at the way in which I've constructed this wire right around that perimeter. And I start off this ground loop
using the base of a DX Commander. I haven't got this connected up in its normal configuration at the moment, just using the base plate so that I can connect into my radial system, and also using the driven plate so I can a convenient way of connecting a PL259 into the system. And you can see that there's there's a small black wire coming up here onto the back of the trellis work. I actually have this black wire going right around the trellis work. You can see it's in behind the passion fruit vine there. At this stage it makes an excursion down to the ground through this drain pipe, across a pathway up onto the fence line actually. You can see this wire is only 30 centimetres, about a foot off the ground. Every so often I have some little insulators, and we'll talk about those shortly. And so it continues on around the fence line. And behind my hedge there's another wooden fence behind this hedge. And it continues on in this fashion right around the perimeter of the section. I have the wire held off from the fence line every 2-3 metres, I guess, with one of these little plastic insulators, as found in electric fence work, and that just holds the wire off a little bit from the fence. Just a convenient way of holding the wire, really. Wire could actually be stapled directly to the fence line, no trouble.
Again, in true scientific fashion, the next thing in any scientific experiment, of course, is the method. We've covered the aim, we've gone through the equipment that are necessary. Now we need to know a method. So back to our board here. The method, we're going to actually run a wire right around the perimeter of the property, as we showed in that previous slide here, right here. So we're going to run a wire right around the property like that. And we're going to have that wire about 30 centimetres, 1 foot above the ground. Above the ground, all around right around the property. There'll be, of course, there is a couple of places there where I have gone under the ground, and that's not going to cause us a problem at all, I assure you. What else do we need to know about the method? I've used insulated wire, and I have got little standoffs to stand the wire off from the fence itself, and we'll cover that in a little bit. Well, that's our method. Okay, so here we have 40 meters, probably my favorite band on CW. I'm trying to find some SOTA guys here on 7032. This is on my regular dipole. And you can see how noisy it is. Let's switch over to the loop and see what happens. There's a very faint CW signal there, but it's readable. Yeah, it's in the middle of a contest of some sort. Switch back to the dipole. Just noise, no signal there at all. Oh, if I listen very, very carefully, I can hear a scratch of a CW signal there, but not much. Switch back to the loop again. Oh, there you go.
Still noisy, but a very faint signal. I could actually pull that out, I guess. And back to the dipole once more. Yeah, nothing there. Oh, I think that's pretty good, isn't it? Very conclusive, really.
Wow. Well, now that's working astoundingly well, isn't it? I'm actually getting, I can hear the signals. Sure, there's no movement on the S meter at all. You can't see it, but I can hear the signals. So Q5, I can actually copy those signals now simply by using that very close to the ground loop antenna. For the interest of full disclosure, the few things I've done, I have enhanced the audio a little bit through my sound card. I can tweak the audio a little bit and enhance things and pull it up a little bit more. But the big thing is I've actually got some signal I can work with now, and that's the whole secret. This is great. There is a sequel to this. We can take it a little bit further. Can actually boost those signals even more by putting in a small preamp into that loop, and that will be the subject of another video coming up very soon. So, what great results! Here we go. We can hear the signals now. There's no S reading, as we said. The copy is Q5, and that's the important part. We can actually copy these signals, and that's brilliant. Now, I would like to see what results you get. Grab a lump of wire, sling it out around the property. It doesn't have to be, as you see, as you've seen, it doesn't have to be anything flash at all. Get the loop as big as you possibly can, and see what happens. There are a few other things we can do to enhance this a little bit. We can use preamplifiers. We can also use balancing ballons in there. A 9-to-1 ballon might actually help a little bit. But just do the wire system at the moment. Have a close listen, see if there's any perceptible difference between, now remember it's the signal to the noise ratio that we're after. See if that noise has dropped away a little bit, see if the signal is enhanced a little bit with your experiment. And put the results down in the comments below, would you? I'd love to hear from you. Now listen, for the ultimate antenna of low noise antenna, the real ultimate, you really need to go and have a look at this video up here now.
Okay. So there we go. Now this is a gentleman that has used a little bit of technology and has applied some rules that we know, and he has found a way, even in a seemingly impossible situation, to improve his signal to noise ratio. He created this loop, and in doing so, he improved his signal to noise ratio dramatically, as was demonstrated on that video. Now, there are a couple of things that we can do in our stations, even if we don't have the same setup necessarily as what he has. And so we're going to talk about those right now. Are we still here, Pat?
Yeah, we're here. I'm doing something, so be patient with me a minute.
It's all good.
I found your other video.
Okay, well, here we go. A couple things here. Number one, ground your station.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DX Commander. My name's Callum, and I'm in the bunker today because I'm absolutely delighted. I have tracked down some local QRM.
All right, sorry about that.
That's okay.
We at least got the video, though. Is that the one you wanted?
It's a great video, and it's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to hearing it in just a second. Okay. He always has a way of making ham radio fun, and I think that's awesome. But one thing, if you do nothing else, or you don't hear anything else that we say tonight about noise, please understand that signal is there. Signal is out there. And if you can't hear it, it's because of noise. The least expensive thing you can do to better your station is to reduce noise. Now, one of the things that most ham radio operators don't do, have never done, is they've never grounded a piece of equipment. I can promise you, because I proved it in my own life, in my own station, I can promise you that if you'll ground your station, you'll be shocked at how the noise floor falls. Remember, signal is there, but signal is being obliterated or is being covered up by noise. If you can't hear the people out there, it's because your noise level is so high that you can't discern, your radio cannot discern that signal because all it's hearing is noise. So if you will go out and you'll ground your station, a real earth ground, you will be shocked at how the performance of your station will improve because the noise floor will fall. When I first started out, I had a noise floor here at my house because of my neighbors of about six to seven, S6, S7, any time of the day, any day of the week, any time of the day or night, it was S6 or S7. And so the first thing I talked to Pat about it, and I said, I've got this noise. He said, have you grounded your station? That was the first thing you said. And I said, no, I have not grounded my station. He goes, ground your station, then we'll talk again. And so I didn't think more about it for a few weeks. And then it came back to me, Gerry, you need to ground your station. So what I did is I went out and I went to the local hardware store, the happiest place on earth, otherwise known as Home Depot. And I got 3 grounding rods. I figured 3 would get the job done. So I went out behind the house here, right out the window of where my station is. And I sank all 3 of those grounding rods into the soil outside my window. And I tied them all together. They're tied together with a big strap, all 3 of them. And then I ran that strap also over to the house ground. And I attached to that. Well, then I ran a strap up to my station up through the window. And I grounded everything that I have, all of my radios, my power supplies, my antenna tuner, everything that I have here in the station, I put to that ground. I got a nice piece of copper and grounded all my radios and everything to that piece of copper, which is attached to the strap. Just by doing that one thing alone, my meter, my S meter on noise fell from S6, S7 to S3. So I halved my noise simply by grounding my station.
And that's something a lot of people don't realize that you can do easily. The ARRL has several, in fact, it's got one of the best, most intensive sections on grounding that anybody's got. Grounding is a big thing as far as getting rid of noise. You should, if you haven't considered it yet, you should consider it. It's the best way to get RF out of your shack. It's the thing that I found when I did mine, and I went probably a couple of years without any kind of ground in this house at all. And then I got into the HF side and I started having some real issues with it. So I took and I did your typical thing. I went to the ARRL and looked it up, seen what I had to do. They suggest 3 8-foot ground rods, which is what I did. And I took and put them out. I haven't tied in the house ground yet, but I'm going to do that eventually. But the things that I was having problems with, my computers, when I'd pull into my driveway, there was no mistaking where I lived. Because those computers were making so damn much noise, it wasn't even funny. So I took and that was one of the first things I did. I took and grounded the radio. I took ground strap and went to a ground bus. Grounded the computers. Grounded everything I could that had a screw on it. I grounded it.
There you go.
You can drive down this street now and not hear me. You won't know where I live. It cut every bit of that out. It was RF coming off the computer cases is what it ended up being. And, you know, it was a remarkable, that alone made it worth doing. And what
Yes.
it did, what that ended up doing to the RF on, you know, the noise, the RFI, was it pretty much cut it in half. I still got more that I want to do, but when I get that done, I'm hoping that even better results.
Well, and the other thing that Pat had suggested to me that he just brought up again, so this is all kind of making sense, is you were talking about common mode current. And so I thought, well, maybe I've got some of that coming into the shack. So what I did is I went out and made an air choke or an air balun, whatever you want to call it. It's not a balun, it's a choke. And I put that on each one of my vertical antennas. Now, I don't have enough room here at my place to be running a big long wire. So I have verticals. I have a DX Commander 1080 vertical, and I have a Hustler 6 BTV, and both fine antennas. But they will carry common mode back if you're not careful. And so one quick thing you could do with your antennas, if you go out there by the antenna itself, whether it's a wire, especially if it's a wire, to a lesser degree, the vertical, people will argue with you about verticals. They'll say, well, you don't really have common mode current with a vertical. Maybe. I don't, when somebody gives me a platitude and it has always or never in it, then I know it's always wrong. And so just to be sure, I went out and I took the coax cable closest to my antenna, and it's very simple. The size of your palm, if you just make a loop a little bit bigger than your palm and you sit there and you do that about 6 to 8 times, I use 8. I use 8 turns, and then you can take those plastic twisty things that you can buy down at the happiest place on earth, and you can use those to hold that in a circle, or like a buddy in my club does. He doesn't do that. He gets a big roll of electrical tape, and he'll sit there and he tapes the thing into what looks like a big wheel. But anyway, that circle is what stops the common mode current from coming back into your shack. So then you go ahead and reattach your cable to your antenna, and that air choke, those loops of wire, will stop the common mode from coming back and invading your shack. And yes, as Pat just said a second ago, that is a big noise causer right there. And not only that, it's a safety issue at the same time. So make sure that you're not bringing common mode back into your shack. That's another thing that you can do. And then the thing that I did that I didn't know whether it would help or not, but Palomar Engineers in California, which is an old school radio company, told me that it would work, is every wire that I have going in and out of everything. In other words, every wire that goes in or out of my radios has a ferrite bead attached to it. And going in and out of the power supplies, a ferrite bead or ferrite, however that's pronounced. Those you can get them at Amazon, or you can get them anywhere for that matter. But you just snap them right on your wires, and they've got the the core in there, the ferrite core, and that in and of itself brought my noise level down from S3 to now less than S1. I've got between an S0 and an S1 here at the house as far as the noise floor. Well, when the noise floor fell, the most amazing thing happened. I found out there were people out there to talk to. And that was something that I had never heard these people before. And I found that there were faraway stations that I could now hear. So I was able then to go ahead and start DXing. I was able to talk to people in California from Ohio. I was able to talk up to all the Canada provinces and down into Mexico. I had a contact the other day with Argentina. That would have never happened before I got my noise right, because there was just too high of a noise floor to hear the signal. The signal is out there. It's the noise that obliterates the signal. Now, there's one other thing you can do, and I have never experimented with this simply because I don't have to, because I did the things Pat told me to do, and plus I added those ferrite beads. But if you still got a noise problem, they make speakers now that you can purchase, and they're pretty pricey. I'll warn you that in advance. They're several $100s. West Mountain has one. Several other companies have these speakers, but these speakers use that same technology as Bose uses in their headphones, to where it listens to the noise, and it also listens to what you're trying to hear, and it matches somehow the noise and it puts it out of phase to where all of a sudden that noise is gone. And all that's left is the sound of whatever it is you're trying to hear. Now, I don't know how effective those are. I do know that the units are very pricey. But to me, that's like trying to fix things after the horse is already out of the barn. If you can't block the noise to begin with, I'm not certain how much signal is left if you try to take care of things after the fact, as opposed to taking care of things in the beginning by reducing your noise.
Didn't you tell me at one point that you actually bought a kit from Palomar?
I did. I bought a noise kit, and it had those ferrite beads in it. The other thing that it had big ferrite rings that you can put over your coax if you want to. Now, I'll warn you in advance about that. You have to be careful where you use those rings. If you try to use the ring between your radio and your tuner, it messes your process up. So you can't put them there. You can then go on your coax that goes ahead and runs outside after the tuner. You can go ahead and add them there and they'll work fine. But don't ever put anything between your tuner and your radio as far as a ferrite ring, because it somehow messes the tuning process up. And I don't know the science behind that, Pat. I'd have to Google it, or I'd have to look it up in a handbook or what have you. But at any rate, if you're going to use the rings, use them after the tuner on the way out to the antenna. And I'm not certain how effective those would be anyway. I think if you just ground your station, and I think if you use the air choke, I think you're probably fine on that. So it made a big difference though, because all of a sudden I could use my station. And I'm like that. I'm not as bad as that guy on tape. He looks like he's in a hopeless situation to me. I mean, did you see how close together those houses in Europe are?
I saw that.
I mean, it's like you could just spit on your neighbor's house. Like terrible.
I got to admit, he did get me thinking about that wire.
Isn't that clever?
I could take about 80 feet of wire here, 100 feet of wire here, and just string it on along the property line.
And you know where you can get that wire, and you can get the little insulators on the cheap. I happened to be buying squirrel food the other day, of all things. So I was down at the Tractor Supply Company.
I was just going to say that.
And they had those little ceramic insulators. Like, he was using the plastic ones, but they have the ones made out of ceramic. They had those things for like 20 cents a piece. And as far as the wire is concerned, electric fencing wire. You can get a gazillion feet of this stuff for like no money.
Is it insulated?
It's not insulated, so you'd have to have the insulators. Now, his was insulated, and he said he could just go ahead and tack it to the fence. You would have to have an insulated wire to be able to tack it to the fence.
I got a fence that runs all the way around the property.
You do?
Yes, I do. So that's an interesting thought, because I had actually thought about putting. They have those pet wires, but this
yes,
fence,
they do. That's the same stuff.
Most of this fence that I have doesn't have that on it. So what I could do is just get a hunk of wire and tie that through that fence.
If you get it long enough, you can be a top band man.
That would be interesting. I'm going to have to.
It would be. And isn't part of this hobby, a big part of this hobby is experimenting and trying new things. I love it when people try new things. It's awesome. If I ever lose the spark to experiment, that'll be a sad day.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Well, let's take just a couple more minutes. I mean, I know the station manager, so we'll be fine.
Well, we got till 10 after. We didn't start till 10 after 7.
So let's go ahead and run Callum's video. Callum has a way of making everybody laugh, and has a way of adding some levity back into all this. I guess he was able to reduce the other. Now we've been talking so far about QRN, N as in November. In other words, N being natural noise. And as Pat has pointed out on several programs, kind of file this away too in the noggin. Most man-made noises are in the vertical plane. So if you're using a vertical, you're more suspect to noise than if you're using a wire. So that's something to keep in mind also. But he was able to find and hunt down some QRN M. M is in Michael. And this is man-made noise. There's natural noise, QRN. Then there's man-made noise, QRM. And noise is noise, but still, it's kind of fun to be able to identify what it is you're dealing with, because how you deal with it can be totally different. But let's go ahead and roll Callum's video on the QRM, as in Michael, that he was able to track down.
All right, this is going to restart because I didn't have a chance to cue it. So
Let's do it.
We'll be back on the other side. Hang in there.
And I wanted to show you the procedure I used to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DX Commander. My name's Callum, and I'm in the bunker today because I'm absolutely delighted. I have tracked down some local QRM, and I wanted to show you the procedure I used to do that. So over the last few months, I've noticed that it's become more and more difficult to operate from home, basically because I was getting S9 plus of general purpose shite. But I have noticed that Wendy has been buying a lot of little LED bulbs from B&Q, or as you say in America, Home Depot. So I thought, I was actually terrified of doing this experiment because I thought if I switch everything off, and I've still got this, that means it's next door, because I've got a house 20 feet that way. So, but anyway, I bit the bullet this morning, switched everything on. 80 meters was my worst band. And with the preamp off, it was S9. With preamp on, you can imagine it was off the scale and it was unusable. And so I went round the whole ground floor of the house and switching off every plug. And that was the Dyson Hoover thingy, you know, the vacuum, all the tellies that were on standby. Must have been 10 to 12 LED fairy lighty things. Wendy loves all that, candles and sandals and stuff. And we got big lights out the front of the house. I put them off, and each time I'd come back to see if there was a change. And occasionally I had a sort of a psychological change. I'm sure that's a bit better, but you know what, it wasn't. And then I started switching aerials and stuff, and I noticed the vertical on 40 meters was slightly better than the loop, which went all the way around the house. So I thought, I reckon the interference isn't coming from far away. It's coming from right in the center of the house because the loop's picking it up more than the vertical. So I then went upstairs, and then the small bloody fairy lights by the main telly in the main room, main bedroom. And it's a right hassle getting to the plug point. And I switched that one off, came back downstairs. It's gone. It's gone. That was it all along. I've been suffering that for 9 months. So as an experiment, may I suggest you go around your house, switching everything off you can find. You know, when the XYL is out, or your girlfriend, or your husband, or your whoever it is, just switch everything off and take a note on the different frequencies and see if it's got better. Because your listening experience, which means your overall, I mean, it doesn't affect your transmit, does it? But it does affect your ability to listen, which is, you know, 90% of the fun, isn't it, really? In fact, it's 100% of the fun, really. So go and do that. That's how I cured my local QRM, and you never know, you could cure the same. Okay? So just a little tip from Callum here in the bunker today. So enjoy your radio. Happy Christmas, because we are a week before Christmas now. Although you might be watching this in 2 years' time and in the height of the summer, and you'd be wondering why I'm wishing you a Merry Christmas. That's the reason. Cheers and beers. Bye-bye.
Cheers and beers.
You can tell he's probably had a few of both.
By the way, these are these little twisty things. I happen to be able to find one. These are the little plastic things, and you thread that through there like that, and you just pull this thing shut, and this will hold your air choke in place if you're not going to use the electrical tape thing. Isn't that interesting? And so the point is well taken. And here's another thing, kind of a twist on what Callum did. Instead of turning everything off, start turning off one breaker at a time, and then go check your noise, and then another breaker, and see where it is. See if it is something that is QRM, that is in your house, it's in your place, and you know it's coming from you. check to see, where it is. That'll help you narrow things down. In his case, it was the TV. No doubt that was an LCD TV, and they're notoriously noisy. Uh, LED lighting is notoriously noisy, and you turn the LED lights off, and the noise doesn't go away. This has happened to several of my friends, and they're like, I don't understand. And it's like, well, now wait a minute. Until you shut the breaker off, the power supply that feeds the LED lights, it still runs. It runs all the time. And then when the lights come on, it uses that power from that power supply. So just because you turn the lights off, you're not necessarily turning the power supply off. And the power supply is what's making the noise.
Do you want to see an S9?
An S9?
An S9 signal or an S9 noise level? Look at my ceiling. What do you see up there?
Oh, those are those fluorescent lights?
Those are the noisiest damn lights you've ever heard.
Yep.
If I have to do anything on HF, the lights have got to be turned off.
Incandescent lights are your best bet. Even though it's getting hard to find an incandescent bulb nowadays, they're still your best bet because they're the least noisy lights. All that kind of stuff up there that you're showing, that you're right. Those are noise makers. And garage door openers, those things are very noisy. Computers, as you mentioned earlier, those tend to be noisy. And you may find that you have noise from your electrical supply. Well, Gerry, what can you do about noise from the electrical supply? I mean, you're stuck with your electricity, right? Not necessarily. As part of my grand experiment a few years ago when I got my noise lowered, I called the power company and I said, I've got very noisy power here at home. I went out on a limb. I said, my power is noisy. And they said, okay, we'll send a guy out. And they did. He was here 2 days later. And he walked around the property and he was taking all kinds of measurements and he had this little device with him. And I knew that I had some noisy electricity because I could hear the transformer from out on the street humming. And it was the same hum that I was hearing on my radio. He said that he would phone me back. He looked at my antennas. He looked at the whole station. And he looked around the property and he went out and he stood at the power poles for a while. He went to my neighbors' houses and he walked around. He said, Gerry, he said, I'll call you back, which he never did. But he did something because 24 hours later, noise fell. All that noise that I was hearing from that it all went away. So I don't know what they did. Perhaps when I was gone during the day, I have stuff I have to do too. Perhaps while I was gone, they replaced a transformer or they did something. But whatever they did, the noise fell.
Insulators.
So, yeah, that could be. So don't be afraid to call the power company. The power company does not want an FCC complaint. And so they will come out to your home and they will do everything they can to help you. There was a guy up in Akron years ago, back in about 1930, that used to have a tire iron with him. He drove around for the power company, and he would, when people would complain of the noise, he'd go out there and he'd beat the power pole with that tire iron, and he could tell which transformer on which pole was the noisy one by beating it. I don't know how he knew, but he knew, and it became famous. There was a big write-up on him in the Akron Beacon Journal about him going around, and all his total job was to take care of the noisiness. And so those guys are still today. They don't use a tire iron anymore, I don't think, but they're still around and they're still doing their job. So don't be afraid to call the power company.
You can use a sniffer or something to that effect. I showed everybody that here a couple months back. You can use a sniffer to find that stuff. What a lot of people don't realize what the law states there. That is what's known as a spark gap transmitter. Anytime you're hearing anything as far as a buzz, click, whatever, on your any of your equipment, you're getting affected by what they call a spark gap transmission, and that is completely illegal according to the FCC. And if you start getting that, they have to take more than reasonable care to make that stop happening. That's pretty much written in the federal laws, I believe. And if
Well, they don't want to fine, and that's the last thing the power company wants is to
they
deal with a
they can
fine.
fine them top power companies $25,000 or something like that, or that's what it used to be
Whoa!
per per incident. So you
And
can
since
imagine
the
that's why they're
SEC is all about the green,
that's why they're wanting to get it. That's why they go out of their way to fix this stuff. If you remember, there was a ham in it, NYE. I don't know if you knew him or not. He's a
no,
guy. He's a guy that worked down at WCUE. I don't that I've referred to before. He used to take and complain constantly about um, the spark gap stuff, and he'd got to the point where he would take and he'd go find the pole that the stuff was on. He would take an AM radio so he could hear it, and with a little beam on it, and he'd go find the pole and then go turn it in. Two or 3 days later, they'd be out, replace the insulators, poof, gone. You know,
isn't that amazing how something like just the insulator can make all that noise?
a lot of it, what happens with it, especially with the winters we've got around here, you get, and considering that most of these poles run right along the lengths of road,
Yes.
you get, in the winter, they salt those roads, and that salt gets in the air and flies up and gets on those insulators, creating a ground, and the next thing you know, you got a spark gap. That's exactly what that stuff does.
That's all it has to do, too. It just has to go from the positive over to the ground, and you've got a spark jump.
And when that starts happening, you start getting the buzz clicks and all. You got to get it fixed. And they'll come out.
It's a fascinating study.
Most of the time, they'll come out and replace the insulators, but a lot of times, all they got to do really is come out and clean them.
I'm going to make a PowerPoint up, I think, here for, we'll do it in the next couple of weeks, but back in the 1930s into the 1940s, you'll all find it fascinating that they were experimenting with in-ground wires for antennas. And they actually had a below ground antenna that they developed for ham radio. And there was one particular man, and this was in one of the ARRL magazines here sometime back. But there was one man that specifically developed a great antenna, which I'll make some PowerPoints up on it. We can show it on the program. But he actually developed an in-the-ground antenna that had an S0 because of the fact that it was in the ground, no noise whatsoever. All you got was the signal. And it's really a fascinating story. And I'll tell you, who took that technology and ran with it was the U.S. military. And to this day, they have in-ground antennas.
I believe that.
Military uses.
I've heard that before.
Interesting stuff. So we'll cover that on one of the programs here coming up. And in the meantime, maybe you got some ideas tonight on some things you can do at your station to lower the noise. You can experiment with a loop like that gentleman did. Anything that is measurable, any changes that you make, just make sure you keep notes, and that way you can refer back to it. Otherwise, what Callum said just a second ago can happen. You can kind of fool yourself. In other words, you can come back in after you've made a change and you could say, well, I think that helped. So psychologically, you kind of fool yourself into thinking that it did help when in fact it really didn't help. And anytime that you're doing anything scientific, make sure you make scientific measurements. That S meter doesn't lie, and it doesn't think anything. It just reports what it's hearing. And those are two different things. So hopefully some good ideas for you tonight as you work on the noise on your station. Remember what I started with tonight. I want to come all the way back to that now. Lowering the noise in your station is the least expensive thing that you can do to improve your station's performance. It's better than adding a new antenna. It's better than getting a better radio. It's cheaper than all those things. And it's something that you can do fairly easily, fairly cheaply, and it's very effective. And with that, I'm out of gas tonight, brother.
I hear you. I am too.
Been a great program, though.
Yep.
And we would like to invite you back next week, every Tuesday night, approximately, give or take 10 or 15 minutes, 7 o'clock. We hit the air, and next week we'll be only too happy to invite you back for another program. The World According to Elmer on Crooked River Radio. Pat, I think I'm going to just say 73.
All right, I'll do the same, and we'll catch you next week. If you get a chance, if you've listened to this program on YouTube, please give us a subscription. You'll be able to know whenever there's new stuff coming, and you'll get reminded when our programs are on. Have a good week, and 73 till next week. Later, Jer.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. See you again soon.